Good afternoon. Welcome to the Business Podcast. Today I am joined by my colleague Nigel Elkes from the Business Board and Succession Planning. Hi, Nigel.
Hi, Nikki. Hi, everyone.
So you're smiling already. It's
Absolutely.
for anyone that's on the pulse of what's going on in the market. It is still a really good market, but there are some certain challenges. And poor Nigel, he's having to face a lot of the challenges at the moment. So we're going to be cheering him up today with all the positivity that there is still there. So today, what we are focused on, normally we're all talking about the seller because usually we're representing the seller, though I often, for due diligence things, do often represent buyers as well. So today we are talking about the buyer. We're talking about, in fact, the buyer acquisition playbook. So we've got quite a lot of little hidden gems along the way. So if you do have time, try and join us for all of it. If not, don't worry. We are being recorded on to YouTube if you're watching live. So you can catch up later on the Gorringe Accountants YouTube channel and catch this later. So we are going to go through several areas, but I think the best place to start is what is the current market looking like for buyers. So Nigel, if you want to just sort of kick us off and tell us what you're seeing in different sectors and things.
Yeah, thanks, Nikki, and hello, everybody. It is actually, as always, it's sector driven, and the big elephant, obviously, in the room that wasn't here a year ago, the interest rates are sort of impacting in certain areas and certain sectors, or basically changing the structure of some of the deals and how things are being sort of put across. So I think it's what your strategy is, what your sector is, and I think the truth is how you're funded, and if you've got a funding strategy, private equity supported, then probably you're in a very good place. I think if you're raising funds and you're then going through what is probably a 3-month period from heads to due diligence, at the moment your costs of borrowing would have increased considerably. So hence the deal changes, and hence it's kind of looking at them with a little bit of stress factoring in there so that you're covered. But I think if we go back to the sectors.
So can I just interject for a second? I think that's actually you've got the nub there. It's the speed of the change. In some ways, I think it's not particularly just the actual level of interest rate, but if you've done your numbers, say back in February, and your model worked at 3%, whatever the rate was, because it keeps changing every flipping month at the moment, people would not 12 months ago would have been expecting that you could have had two in that 3-month period, another 2 or 3 interest rate rises. It's just not usual, not currently usual, and that's the thing. One little interest rate rise, fine, but it's the speed, and therefore it's the uncertainty. And if you're not fixing your borrowing, you're then worrying, oh my goodness, is it going to keep just going higher and higher and higher? So sorry for interjecting that Nigel, but I think that was just important to highlight that it's the speed of the change at the moment.
And it's absolutely right, because also, again, sector dependent, but each transaction really will be 6, 9 months, 12 months, those type of timings, again, depending on the sector. But a lot has changed in that period, and it's probably not just the interest rates. It's obviously the inflation, it's the materials, it's people's margins, and obviously, okay, it's highlighting the energy prices are coming down, but they're all significant factors in the transition of completing a deal. And So there's a few more hurdles that probably 12 months ago, maybe a bit longer, weren't there. So yeah, it's to, when you're looking at opportunities, it's to factor those in. It's to sort of stress test your funding, and even if you've got your own funds, there's still a cost to those funds. So there's an
Yeah,
opportunity cost
Yeah. Oh,
with whatever you go for.
jinx.
So yeah, that's really what we're seeing. So
Yeah, absolutely. And of course there's always winners and losers in every market. So there will be for businesses and sectors that, because of the interest rate rise, because of the cost of living increases, all of the other things, they're going to be really squeezed. But of course, for the buyer, they might be so squeezed that they might be quite a bit stressed and actually might be able to get a bargain because they don't want to keep going on in that. So there's always a bright spark somewhere, but also there will be sectors that are benefiting from the current market. So for example, I know a lovely company in Reading that, with the cost of metal keep going higher and higher, and as they are a metal fabricator, they're still doing the same volume of work as they were 3 years ago, but their margins are sky high because they got loads more revenue and more profit because the costs are high, which everyone accepts, but that all flows through. So there are winners and losers. What you need to be doing as buyers is selecting your sector carefully of where you want to do. Make sure you've got your numbers right, and and absolutely what Nigel said, you need to be stress testing your model, because you can't rely upon current conditions because they will change.
I think also, as a buyer, it's probably looking at the type of profile, not the generalization of the sort of, well, people like me, 50 plus directors who then would want to sell, but generally looking at what are the business where sales actually go through. And again, this is also dependent on the size and the type of organization. So it's certainly where there's multiple directors, often there's a joint decision that's made to sell a business. That's a collective. They've made that decision and they get on with it, and then they instruct somebody like ourselves. Then we get on with the marketing, and off we go. And there's then not that sort of element of doubt that can sometimes creep in when there's sole ownership under one person. And certainly if they're of a certain age, then that can then divert when the sort of the conditions change. So the offers aren't as strong as what they would have been. And then obviously they don't want to change. So I think from a buyer's perspective, you've got a certain amount of time to be able to investigate and research the market, or instruct your broker to research the market. And you don't want to you want to be backing the right horses, and I think it's a matter of tracking those horses and making sure you're monitoring them and keep in touch. And maybe their figures aren't there at the moment, and maybe they're sort of, they just put a sale on ice for a period of time while some of this settles down, because they're not getting the price they need. But I think if you track them and you keep in touch with people, and also what we're seeing is a lot more sort of phased opportunities, whereby the buyers are the sellers are in a situation where they want to get out, but they can't sell at the current prices, but they know that they'll come back. And so we're seeing a partial purchase in some of these situations, and also in the right situations, it's a good way to do it. So everybody gets to know each other, and ensures it's conducive for a sort of successful merger.
Yeah, so those are two very different strategies, aren't they? You've got the partial partial sale, partial purchase, depending on which side of the fence you're on, and that is good from the seller's perspective, because if they think there's sort of a rising market and therefore they feel like they're underselling at the moment, they still have got a stake in the business and therefore they will benefit from when that goes back up again. Different to an earn out where you are actually selling the whole of the business, but you are going to be paid depending on how the market picks up. So sort of two different strategies there. As we all know, there are thousands of different ways that you can set up a deal. So yes, that's
I
the
think
market. As we said, we were going to talk a bit about, so before we go next section, we were going to talk a bit, we have mentioned some sectors. I'll just mention a couple, and perhaps you might want to pick up a couple, Nigel. The accountancy sector, still massive interest. There's so much acquisition there, primarily because there's a huge amount of private equity backed groups at the moment. So there is a desperate need to for finding sellers. What else?
I think
In Sorry, yes.
so I was just going to interrupt, sorry, and
No,
say I
go for it.
think where there's, as always, a strong, robust, repeatable income stream that will always, always be popular and always sell, and also give funders, peace of mind. And I think all these rules, so obviously a robust income stream, a good spread of customers, longevity of relationships, a good management team in place, everything. And if, as part of your buying strategy, you say, right, we're looking for this, this, and this, and this, that's what you're looking for. But also, if you are for want of a better word, a well-heeled purchaser with deep pockets, you could probably not command the deals, but there's certainly the marketplace is diluted slightly. Although on recent, we were talking earlier, Nikki, we've had a phenomenal amount of inquiries for a couple of the recent engagements. But when we sift through them and everything, it's then having the robust offerings there with people who can then deliver and deliver over a period of time. For example, one at the moment, the company is about £7 million turnover. They're being bought by a £90 million turnover company, and the sort of the framework is set. The deal tracks are in line. They've done it many times before. So it's really then adhering to that process. So what I'd say to a lot of buyers is, if you have got strong funding in place, then I think it's having a clear timetable and framework of how you do a deal to put it there. And again, it's also being realistic, because sometimes we're going out to people and then people say, yeah, no, we can do a deal in 4 weeks. I mean, to be honest, ask any solicitor, can we do a deal in 4 weeks? And, there's not many that say yes, unless it's a severely stressed situation, which we're not really talking about today, or we can talk about today. But I'm really referring to sort
Yeah,
of
today we're talking about the good, strong businesses that have got good profits. Um, so those are there, and
yeah,
so yeah. So I think to sort of wrap this sort of section up is that, there is going to be the opportunities for you as buyers there, because there are going to be businesses that have got to that natural point in their succession planning that they need to sell, whether it's due to the size growth, and they can't take it to the next step, or the age of the managers, etc. So there will be the opportunities, but what there won't be so much at the moment is those opportunists that are trying to sell because they go, oh, this market's really high at the moment, and I'm just going to see, can I actually sell my business, which probably realistically at an overpriced amount. And that's what you as a buyer, you don't want to be touching. You want to be buying those strong businesses that are going to make you money and not stretch you out and is um, too difficult on the numbers. The next area that we were going to talk about is the due diligence section, which is really important for you as a buyer. And we wanted to go through the importance of it, but also, you've really got to get the balance between the scope and the price and the risk, because that's just a careful balancing act. Because, realistically, if you're buying a £1 million business, you're not going to be wanting to spend 50 grand on due diligence. It's just no what it's, but you then again, you also don't want to not do due diligence and find that you've got some 100 grand problem in the company. So, Nigel, what's your sort of general advice to buyers when they're entering their due diligence phase?
I think hopefully the detailed pack that you sort of receive in the first place covers a lot of what the company's about.
Yeah.
I think there's the obvious management accounts and all those, but what I'd probably look at is how the speed in which figures are delivered, how organised they are, and I think if the figures are presented in the correct manner, orderly fashion, and accurate, then a lot of the housekeeping, not you can assume is the same, but will probably be kept in the same manner and to good order. So I think what I'd probably say is you get a good overview. There's things like client details which probably won't be released until the 11th hour because of obvious reasons. There'd be personnel detail which should fall into the same sort of category, but I think everything else should be available to you. And I think, as always, with a lot of deals and a lot of successful acquisitions, it's down to the personalities around the table, who's staying in the business, how that works, how they get on, and what the process is. And then it's kind of really, then it's to heads, and then it's across to the financials from there. I'd sort of move across to, which is obviously back to you, Nikki, for your side of things.
Yeah, I think the key is you need to do proper due diligence, but when I was saying earlier, is getting the right balance. So hopefully, well, if you're a buyer that you're already familiar with the sector, you'll know the sort of areas that you'll be wanting to focus on. If you aren't new to the sector, it's really important to have people involved in the due diligence that are familiar with the sector and know where the skeletons could be hidden. So it's getting a good balance between the legal and the financial due diligence. And as I said, you don't want to be spending ridiculous amounts of money on the low risk areas. You want to focus on where are the high risks, and spend your time and money there to give you peace of mind in that purchase. And of course, this is also where having a really good solicitor, which has great warranties into the contract, etc., to make it as safe as possible. Anyway, so even if there is something that's found after purchase that you are you're not going to financially be penalised, hopefully.
No, I think also you came a good point you sort of mentioned there, Nikki, was about if you know the sector or you don't know the sector. And I think within the current market, with probably not increased risk, but with the increased sort of underlying cost of a deal, which is there, I think it's probably less of a time to be diversifying into unrelated sectors, so to speak. And I think buyers, if they're in the same sort of space and doing more of the same, they'll be getting more exponential benefit from a purchase. And I think it's quite important to get that strategy lined up. So again, you've got an opportunity cost of a number of businesses, but I think it sounds obvious, but it's probably homing in on the one that will give you the best return, and generally that's doing more of the same, unless it's a kind of really related diversification. But more of the
Yes.
same within this climate feels a lot more comfortable, so the buyer gets a lot more benefit, makes more money from it, and it's a success for everybody. So I think it's looking at those components as
Yeah,
well,
so
really.
it's getting the economies of scale. We mentioned the accountancy sector earlier. As people that know us are aware, we cover multiple sectors in the SME space for M&A.
Yeah.
But I'm just mentioning the accountancy sector because there is just such a lot of activity in that at the moment. But that's why you have got a lot of acquisition there, because you can get economies of scale by putting everybody under the same group and branding. And there's a huge amount of offshore models and things as well, so they can really take on a batch of fees and still make a lot of money because they outsource a load of it. But also, I thought that was really good, your point, Nigel, about doing things similar. So if you're looking at horizontal or vertical integration, so it's still that you're familiar, and it does help you diversify, because there are positives about diversifying, but it's diversifying with less risk if you're vertical or horizontally diversifying, because hopefully you're still familiar with that area. God, the time's flying, you see, Nigel. Told
I
you
think
we're today. Um, so the last area that we really wanted to go into, which ties up from the beginning and in the middle, because it's about what we're looking at, the certainty of your revenue projections. So that's really important in relation to how you structure your deal in the first place, but also within the due diligence section as well. So you sort of touched on this earlier, Nigel, but what things, if you're a buyer out there, what things are you looking to? I know you mentioned a few things earlier, but let's really label them out now. What things are you looking for to make sure those revenue projections are buttoned down?
I think it's obviously, if the more contractual you, the better, providing the contractual is rolling contractual and it's ongoing. You don't want it to be taken on something in an 18 months time. They go out to tender and they've got to come back and do those sort of things. So again, often sector driven. The managed service providers, some of the tech companies where they've got that certainty of revenue, I think that then gives any lender confidence. It gives the buyer confidence if they're using their own funds, and it also gives the private equity guys confidence if if you're doing a buy and build with their support. So the contracts and the type of contracts. And I think when we're talking about due diligence, it's actually reading between the lines on those and just checking they're all sort of robust. So I think that's what gives certainty. Obviously, longevity of relationships can give that reassurance on projections and everything. But again, as long as there's a nice spread, we don't want, if there's a big customer in there that takes up 25%, 30, 40% of revenue, then it's kind of shouldn't be probably part of your strategy. Again, going back to the opportunity cost of looking at the different businesses out there, it's better to sort of make sure you tick as many of these boxes as possible so that you're covered and it's a successful acquisition. So
And that was interesting on the longevity of clients, because what we've seen recently in deals is people, the due diligence analysts have been very much focused upon the contractual and almost dismissing the fact when there's sort of natural repeat business by clients being sticky enough. And I suppose it's because they're the people that are doing the due diligence don't seem to be able to measure that stickiness unless it's in a contract somewhere, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
Which is a real
and that,
shame.
and that is buy dependent and how close they are, which is sometimes where the partial sale or a phased exit strategy and things like that can work, and then they've got visibility to how the business works and everything that it says on the tin it delivers. So yeah.
Yeah, because I was just thinking, because you from the the person that's doing the due diligence, they'll be ticking their boxes and they'll be going saying, all right, somebody's got a 5-year contract, yay, tick tick tick, compared to another business where the average might be a year contract. But that doesn't take into the fact that those people tied into the 5-year contract might be really, really unhappy and desperate to cancel the contract as soon as they get out. Whereas those 1 year, no, obviously it depends on the thing, but those 1 year ones could be like, well, now I'm going to stay with them forever. I love this business. It's great.
Yeah.
It's getting those intangibles, which perhaps we can start seeing more things from people's Google reviews or whatever else things, but that's still not coming into the corporate finance element at the moment. It's still, oh, what's on the contract, which is a real shame for some really good businesses, to be
I,
honest.
I think that's right, but I think commerciality has got to prevail in some of these situations, and often that doesn't go hand in hand with a detailed accountant's due diligence. Obviously, no offence, but I think within these situations, for any buyer, the most important thing is probably to sort of drill down more than ever and in essence do a SWOT analysis of each opportunity. So the strengths, the weaknesses, and really think to the external world that we're going through at the moment. And one threat, that we keep hearing, the technology threat of AI or the embracing of it, and looking at how businesses you can use customer databases to kind of move into or evolve into a different sort of offering. So I think there's all those sort of things that you'd put into a SWOT analysis, and that should form actually a sort of your strategy buying within the current market. So as we started off, it's not just down to the elephant in the room of the rapid interest rates, but that can sort of sift out a few people and clear the way for some quality buyers to come through and be able to sort of fulfill a good acquisition strategy.
Absolutely. So I think we covered lots and lots of things in the buyer side today. So that was really great. Thank you, Nigel. If there was one main takeaway, what would be the main takeaway you'd like to say to buyers out there?
I think it's probably, as we just said, I think it's doing that research piece that's then you know exactly what you're looking for, and actually go for those companies. Don't be sidetracked into other sort of sectors that you're not as familiar with. So I'd say have your strategy and make sure it's well funded, and then you'll find opportunities because they're out there, because it is a different market, to 12
Absolutely. Be
months ago.
strict on your selection.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. Don't be, so I know that sometimes people can feel like the money's burning in their pocket and they want to sell it, but you don't want to burn through it and then never see it again. So absolutely right. Do select carefully. Um, Thank you so much, Nigel. That was really, really
Pleasure.
good. Lots of great stuff there. Next week, we have Mark Dolby joining us, and I think Nigel might be in the room too, because Mark Dolby is going to be talking to. He's from Beaufort Financial. He's going to be talking to us about pensions, about looking at potential projections, all the clever
He's
stuff
a
that
great
happens
guy.
with pensions. Yeah,
Great guy.
absolutely. So yeah, join us next week. Don't forget it's a bank holiday, so hopefully we all can enjoy a nice sunny bank holiday weekend. And thank you again, Nigel, and thank you everyone for watching. Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thanks, Nikki. Bye, everyone.